Welcome to this plenary session. Was there more from? My name is Ariel Hauge. I'm Deputy Director of the Independent Evaluation Office at UNDP. I was asked to step in to chair this session in order to relieve Rob of the dual task of being a commentator and chair. And so my task is a very straightforward one. I will only then, without much introduction, I think you're all familiar with our speaker this morning. Marcus Segone is Director of the UN Women Evaluation Office, Independent Evaluation Office, also Chairman of the United Nations Evaluation Group, and has, of course, had a long and prominent association with the National Evaluation Capacity Development arena in so many different capacities and roles. Without further ado, then also might as well introduce you. Are all familiar with Rob van den Berg, of course, Chairman of IDEAS, who again bringing a distinguished career and many roles at the moment, which include visiting professorships at University College, King's College, and Institute of Development Studies in Sussex. We'll be having Marco speak, Rob give his comments. There will be opportunities, of course, also for the plenary to discuss. So with that, Marco, please come, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts.
Thank you very much, Harold. Well, good morning to the Anglophone friends. Bonjour tous les amis francophones. Buenos días a los amigos latinos. Bom dia aos amigos brasileiros. Buongiorno agli amici italiani. Guten Tag. Assalamu alaikum. Ni hao. And savadika. And what? Goedemorgen. Something like this. And sorry if I missed some well, that's going to be difficult. If the Finnish is a difficult one. Now, it's really a big pleasure to be here with all of you. And before starting, I would like really to congratulate Indran Naidu from UNDP and Rob van den Berg from IDEAS for really showing us the way that we should all work, that is really partnership. I think this joint conference will be a milestone in the global evaluation community history because it's really showing the power of coming together. So really, congratulations to Rob and Indran. And perhaps before starting my speech, just very briefly, just to let you know what are the three organizations that I'm representing. So UN Women is the UN agencies for gender equality and empowerment of women. UNEG is the United Nations Evaluation Group, that is the network of evaluation offices of 46 different UN agencies. I was not even aware that the UN has 46 different agencies before being elected as UNEG chair. And then I'm also co-chair of Eval Partners, that is the Global Partnership for National Evaluation Capacity Development. That is a partnership that brings together about 60 organizations, all the regional VOPEs, UN agencies, some multilateral banks, academies, civil society organizations, few government from the north, few government from the south, etc. So I've been asked to talk about the opportunity and challenges in evaluating equitable and sustainable development in the context of the SDGs. So our journey together in the next 20 minutes will be that I will talk a little bit about the world that we have versus the world that we would like to have. I will talk a little bit about equitable development, what do we mean and how to get there. I will talk about the SDGs as an opportunity and challenge also for the evaluation community and about the best way forward. So let's start with the world that we have versus the world that we would like to have. Well, the reality is that we live in a world of massive concentration of wealth. And these two indicators, I think they are quite direct and powerful. And I know that you will not believe them, but they are hard data. So the richest 1% of the population owns 40% of the world's health, while the poorest 50% of the population owns only 1% of the world's health. The world's 3 richest people own wealth equivalent to the combined GDP of the world's poorest 48 countries. I think these are quite striking indicators. But you may say, well, okay, that's only about income, in the case of social development is different. But if we look also at the social development, the situation is not much different. I mean, I could have presented you all the different indicators related to MDGs, but just for the sake of time, I just picked 2 of them. And these 2, they are saying that almost 1 billion people are still malnourished, meaning they are still suffering hunger. 1 in 3 women will be beaten, raped, abused, or mutilated in their lifetimes. I repeat, 1 in 3 women will be beaten, raped, abused, or mutilated in their lifetimes. I'm pretty sure that our women colleagues in the room, they will immediately understand what's the meaning of that indicators. So let me just open a small bracket, mainly for my male colleagues. All of us has a mother, several of us has a wife, some of us has a daughter. This indicator means that from a statistical point of view, 1 of the 3 will be beaten, raped, abused, or mutilated during her lifetime. And these indicators are not indicators referring to the Middle Age or to the prehistory. These indicators are from 2013, so they are today words. So is this the word? So mainly the idea is that the poor are those who are suffering the most. So the question is this the world that we really would like? Or we would like a world where there is equitable development for equitable societies? Or we would like a world where there are all rights for all human beings everywhere at any time? I think that all of us would agree that that's the kind of world that we would like. Now the question is, how can we get there? Well, we can get there by prioritizing the most deprived. We should avoid to be like the man over there saying, for our first election, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. It's not really fair, obviously. So it's very important that we always take into consideration that the different populational groups in the world, within a country, within a community, there are always different populational groups. They are in different situations. And different situations means different treatment if we really want that everybody can enjoy the same rights. So if you are in this situation here on the left side, if we distribute the resources, in this case the boxes, evenly, then the final result is that the short guy will not be able to watch the game. That's why it's so important to prioritize the most disadvantaged. So if we want the 3 guys to be able to watch the game, that means that the tall guy probably doesn't need much additional resources, but the short guys needs the double resources, or 2 boxes. So that's the idea of the prioritization of the most disadvantaged, with the final aim that everybody can enjoy the same rights. I know that this could be the feeling of some of us in the room. If we look, what's our baseline? What's the world that we have? versus the world that we would like to have, that could be a little bit the reaction. But I think that we should not have this perception. I think we should be like this. And why? Because there are some good news. The good news is that more and more countries are recognizing the importance of equitable development. More and more countries are designing and implementing social policies, public policies, exactly to try to decrease the gap between the best off groups and the worst off groups. And not only individual countries, but the international community as such. We already hear during these last 2 days that last month, 192 head of states, that means virtually all the head of states from all the countries that are represented here in the room, they met in New York at the General Assembly, and they officially committed to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And this has been the General Assembly with the highest attendance of head of governments in the last 70 years of life of the United Nations. But there have been also a lot of leaders from private sector, civil society organization, academia, etc. Now, you may say, yes, we already had the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, so what's different? There are 5 key things that are different in the Sustainable Development Goals. First of all, is the process through which the Sustainable Development Goals have been identified. In the last 2 years, all the governments of the world have been negotiating and discussing what the SDG should be. But in the last 2 years, not only the governments, but also civil society, private sectors, etc., they've been very much involved in these discussions. And even individual citizens. For the first time, 8 million people have voted on the SDGs. What are the most important SDGs to them? 8 million people all over the world. So that means that if the SDGs have been developed through a very participatory and inclusive process, it's very likely, or is more likely, that each country will own the SDGs. Obviously, each country will have to adapt the SDGs to their own national context. But the key idea is that the level of ownership will be much stronger than what it was for the MDGs in certain cases. The second very important different element is that, as Rob already mentioned at the opening of the conference, the SDGs are universal. They are not only for developing countries, as mainly the MDGs were. The MDGs, if you remember, 7 of the 8 were mainly for developing countries, while only 1 was for developed countries. In the case of the SDGs, no. The SDGs, there is no country in the world that have achieved the SDGs. So the SDGs are for everybody. And I loved, Robert, your mention in your opening speech when you said that from now on, there are only developing countries in the world. Because it's true. I mean, even if you look to Europe, to North America, to Australasia, etc., if we look at them through the SDG lens, they are also developing countries. So the second key message is that we are all together. All countries are together to achieve the SDGs. The third key difference is that SDGs are comprehensive and integrated. I remember, I think 2-3 months ago, The Economist, that is, I think is the magazine with the highest subscribers in the world. 1 million people subscribe to the Economist, so it's a quite influential magazine. The Economist was quite critical towards the SDGs, saying, well, there are too many. Who is going to achieve 17 goals? You are going to disperse the attention of countries. It was much better before with the 8 MDGs. And they were saying it's much easier from a communication point of view to communicate 8 goals instead of 17 goals. So I would agree with them that from a communication point of view, obviously, it's much easier to communicate 8 instead of 17 goals. And probably if I ask any of you in the room, if you can just tell me now the 17 goals, I'm not sure that there will be many people that will be able. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you, Robert, but I'm saving you from this shame. So that's why the UN came out with the 5P: people, prosperity, planet, peace, partnership. Because that's what the SDGs are about. The 17 goals of the SDGs are about people, meaning social development. They're about prosperity, meaning economical development, but not any economical development, but inclusive economical development. You know, we're talking about shared prosperities. Planet, about the environment, climate change. So these are the first 3P. But then there is a recognition that social, economical, and sustainable development is not possible without peace. So there is a recognition of the importance of peaceful societies. There is a recognition of the importance of trying as much as possible to avoid wars, because otherwise, obviously, they will have a significant negative impact on the first 3P. And then there is a recognition that due to the comprehensiveness and integration of the SDGs, this will be achievable only through partnership. There is no single country, no single organization. It doesn't matter how big, powerful, rich it is that can do it alone. So that's the importance of partnership. Now, going back to the content. This is a work done by the United Nations, and they are trying to map the SDGs. So the big one are the SDG goals. The small one are the 169 SDG targets. So you can see the complexity of the SDGs. You can see that each SDG is directly related to many, many other SDGs. And you can see how dynamic they are. For example, I know I don't find the gender one, but let's say if it was this one, if something change in one, everything will change in the others. So they are integrated and they are interrelated. So when it comes, what are the implications for evaluation? The implication is, are we going on to evaluate such complex, interconnected, and dynamic environments with a traditional, linear, simple, and static log frame approach? That would be one question that we should pose ourselves. So the fourth key difference is that this time gender equality and reducing inequalities are key to the SDGs. The principle of no one left behind is the key principle that is informing the entire SDGs. And that has been mainstreamed through these 2 standalone goals, but also, for example, gender equality is also mainstream in all the other 16 goals, because 40 of the 169 targets are about gender equality. And the principle of no one left behind is present in all the 4 chapters of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Actually, if you haven't read it yet, this document, I would really encourage you just to Google it. It's available in many different languages, and please read it, because that will be if there is one document that will shape the discourse of the international development for the next 15 years, that's the document that you should read. And this document is organized in 4 chapters. There is the declaration, where you have the vision and the shared principles, where human rights, where the principle of no one left behind, is very strongly stated there, and it has been endorsed, I repeat, by 192 head of states. Then you have the SDGs, then you have the implementation, the means of implementation, and very important to us as evaluation community, we have the follow-up and review mechanism. And that's the fifth big difference. This time, the SDGs, they are coming with the follow-up and review mechanism fully integrated in the agenda. So if you read the document is calling for a robust, effective, inclusive, and transparent follow-up and review framework operating at national, regional, and global level, but the key unit of analysis will be the country. And what are the principles of this follow-up and review mechanism for the SDGs? First, they must be country-owned and country-led. Yesterday, we were in a panel, and a UN colleague was saying, you know, I'm dreaming that by 2030, there will be only country-led evaluations. So that's something that I think we have all to work all together to try to achieve. Then the second principle is that this review and monitoring framework should be open, inclusive, and transparent, and support the participation of all people and all stakeholders. So while the 2030 agenda recognizes the key role of the state, it also says that the review mechanism should be led by the states, but in partnership with civil society, academia, and all the different stakeholders in the society. It also says that it should build on existing platform and processes and avoid duplications. So that's the importance of supporting the existing national evaluation systems and national evaluation policies, and not creating new parallel systems. And it also says they should be rigorous and based on evidence, informed by data which is timely, reliable, and disaggregated. Disaggregated by gender, disaggregated by age, disaggregated by ethnicity, disaggregated by urban, rural, etc., etc. And if we want to be serious about the no one left behind concept, then the issue of disaggregation of data is obviously paramount. But most importantly to us as evaluation community, it says that this follow-up and review mechanism should be country-led evaluations, and it calls for strengthening national. I say that I'm so glad that this was the incorporation of evaluation in the SDGs was one of the objectives of the International Year of Evaluation. And so I'm really glad to see that we achieved that objective. In the preliminary draft of the SDGs, there was no mention at all about evaluation. It's only thanks to the advocacy work led by UNEG, but also in partnership with several of you and several other organizations, that we succeed in officially incorporating evaluation in the SDGs. So that's a big opportunity for us. Having evaluation clearly stated in the 2030 agenda, it means that these 192 head of states, they committed to support the strengthening of national evaluation system in all of our countries. That's the opportunity. But then we also have challenges. So the first challenge is, how are we going to address the likely increase in the demand for evaluation that will be responsive to gender equality and social inequalities? How to evaluate equitable development interventions? What are the evaluation questions to assess interventions are relevant and are having an impact in decreasing the disparities and in achieving results for the worst off groups? What are the methodological, the political, social, and financial implications in designing, conducting, managing, and using evaluation responsive to social equity and gender equality? And perhaps even more important, how to strengthen the capacity of government, civil society, and parliamentarians to evaluate the effect of intervention on equitable outcomes for marginalized populations. You are smiling, and it's not going to be easy. Now, another good news is that the evaluation community has been working on these questions, has been trying to advance the profession on these questions. And I would like to invite you to download some of these material that are available free of charge in internet. The one on the left is a practical guidance on how to design and manage equity-focused evaluation. The one on the right is a compilation of articles from well-renewed evaluators, the Michael Quinn-Patton, the Michael Bamberger, et cetera, that they wrote about how evaluation can be instrumental for equitable development results, so they complement each other very well. And by the way, the practical manual is available in English, Russian, Spanish, French, and Arabic. Then you have the UNEG guidance on integrating human rights and gender equality in evaluation that is also available in 3 different languages. And then you have also Transform, that is the new magazine for gender responsive evaluation that is published by UN Women. So there are already some material available for this. I would like to say that when we talk about equity-focused and gender-responsive evaluations, we are not talking about completely new approaches. We are not talking about, forget what we have been doing for the last 10, 20, 30 years, and now it's going to be something completely new. That's not the case at all. If you see the definition of equity-focused and gender-responsive evaluation, is the traditional definition of any evaluation, with the difference that the focus is not on result only, but is on equitable development results, and with a specific focus on gender equality and women empowerment. So it's really a kind of lens that you can use when carrying out your evaluation. But the second thing when it comes to equity-focused and gender-responsive evaluations is not only that then you should look at what's happening to the gap to the disparity between the worst off and the best off. You should not look only to what has happened to the worst off group, but you should look also at the structural causes of those inequities and disparities. You should look at the structural bottlenecks that very often they are linked to social norms, to cultural beliefs, to political relationships, and to power relationship. So that's an aspect that is very strong. And the third key component is that the evaluation process itself, it should be an empowerment process for the most disadvantaged group. Now, for the sake of time, I just have a very simplistic example. So it's very simplistic just for the sake of time. Let's say that you have to evaluate this national policy for the reduction of poverty in one given country. And so 2005, you have 50% of the population that is below the poverty line. After 10 years of the national policy, it went down from 50% to 30%. So if you are evaluating this national policy for a poverty reduction, what would be the main finding? What would be? Pretty easy, no? It's going down, the poverty. So it's positive findings, because poverty is going down. Therefore, the recommendation would be continue with this policy. Now, if you from an equity perspective, the first things you would do is obviously to disaggregate, to see how that national policy has affects in a different manner the different populational groups. And in this case, we could see that, in this case, the poverty rates went down much more for the males and not so much for the female. That's one thing. The second thing you will look at is the disparity gap. You see that the disparity it has increased. So what would be the major findings for this national policy? For the same national policy, it would be, well, it's true that the national average went down, so it's positive. However, it had different impacts on different populational groups. It affects less the most disadvantaged, and it even increased the disparity gap. So it's not so positive, and therefore the recommendation would not be continue with this policy, but would be, well, you have to readjust the policy. So exactly the same national policy would give different findings and different recommendations if you evaluate with an equity and gender lens. So we are not talking about semantic, but we are talking really about something substantial. Now, the three challenges are, first of all, how to evaluate SDGs with an equity and gender lens. The second is how to evaluate the complexity of the SDGs. And the third is how to strengthen national evaluation capacities for this. As I just said in the beginning, there is no single country, no single government, no single organization that can do it alone. And that's why Eval Partners was launched. As I said, Eval Partners is this global partnership of almost 60 members, co-led by IOC, that is the World Federation of all the VOPEs, the Voluntary Organization for Professional Evaluation, and UN Women for the time being, but then it will be UNEG starting December. And they came all together exactly to strengthen national evaluation capacities. But we immediately realized that historically, the global evaluation community has mainly focused on the supply side, meaning on strengthening the capacity to deliver good quality evaluations, but not much on the demand side, meaning the capacity of policymakers to demand for evaluation and to use evaluation. And that's why Eval Partner decided to declare 2015 International Year of Evaluation. So the good news is that 2015 International Year of Evaluation is not an official UN International Year. But that's the good news. The International Year of Evaluation is a global bottom-up movement that was so powerful that was recognized by the UN General Assembly. But it's something that is coming from all of us. It's not something that is coming from over there from New York. It's coming from the global evaluation community. And the main idea of the 2015 Eval Year is exactly to advocate and promote demand and use of evaluation in evidence-based policy making. It's exactly to try to reach out the policymakers community. To avoid this situation, somebody was telling yesterday that usually we are here talking about among ourselves. I mean, it's very good. I see some few parliamentarians in the audience, but the big majority of us are mainly evaluators. So the idea is how to reach out policymakers. And why 2015? As I said, it was decided to select 2015 exactly because in the MDGs, evaluation is absent. The MDGs has been quite strong when it comes to monitoring, tracking, but very weak when it comes to evaluation. And we were going to repeat the same mistake with SDGs. As I said, the SDGs had nothing at all about evaluation. And it's mainly thanks to the power of this global movement for the International Year of Evaluation that we have been able to get the General Assembly to incorporate evaluation in the 2030 agenda. So just to say, so as I said, there's a global movement that started in March 2015 when UNICEF invited the IOC board during the AFREA conference in Ghana to discuss the idea of launching Eval Partners. After a few months, there was the first Eval Partner forum in Thailand. Well, yes, in Thailand, in Chiang Mai. So we are back once again to Thailand. And there it was decided to have an advocacy strategy. And in February 2013, Eval partner met in New York and decided within the framework of a global advocacy strategy to strengthen the dynamic environment for evaluation, to declare 2015 as the International Year of Evaluation. And the declaration was officially done at the NEC conference 2 years ago in Brazil, in November. Since then, in December 2014, the UN General Assembly acknowledged and recognized the International Year. And then the evaluation torch was lit for the first time in the UN building. And most importantly, it was lit even by Ban Ki-moon, the UN Secretary General. And since then, it has been lit in 84 different countries. And by ministers, this is the Minister of Finance in New Zealand, to Minister of Planning in India, Minister of Social Development in Egypt, but also to young evaluators. So it's really a global movement that goes from the UN General Secretary to the young evaluators in several countries. And as we already know, so this global movement for the International Year of Evaluation will culminate in about 3 weeks' time at the Parliament of Nepal. And that was another dream that we had 3 years ago, to organize a global evaluation event inside a national parliament. I think it will be the first time that there will be a global evaluation event inside a national parliament with parliamentarians from all over the world that will talk about how to strengthen the demand, the supply, and the use of evaluation in policy making. At the Parliament of Nepal, there will be new initiative that will be launched. There will be the Global Parliamentarian Forum for Evaluation. As we already hear, there are already regional parliamentarian forums. They are coming together and they will launch the Global Parliamentarian Forum there. And then there will be new networks. The Eval Gender Plus. The plus means that it's not only about gender, but it's about social inequity. So it's about any kind of inequity. So it's a network that will work specifically on strengthening national evaluation capacities to evaluate national policies and localize SDGs with a gender and equity focus. There will be also the launch of Eval Youth. That is a network that will focus specifically on strengthening the capacities of young evaluators, on enlarging the market or facilitating the access of young evaluators to the professionalization of evaluation and therefore to the market of evaluation. There will be Eval SDGs. Dorothy already spoke about it a few days ago. And there will be the launch of the Global Evaluation Agenda for 2016-2020. If you remember 2 days ago, when Dorothy was presenting, Craig Russon from ILO was asking, because Dorothy was always saying we. So Craig was asking, okay, who is this we? Well, this we is all of us. This we are governments, are civil society, academia, UN agencies, multilateral banks, but much more than this. Are parliamentarians, policymakers, decision makers. It's really all of us. Because evaluation should be an agent of change for the world we want. And it will be to each of us to make this dream the reality by hopefully even before 2030. So I would really like to encourage you to be an ambassador of evaluation within all your organization, your country, your institutions, to make the ultimate goal of evaluation a reality. And the ultimate goal of evaluation is to try to change the world from what we have now to what we would like in the future. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Marco. I am sure that your introduction presentation has inspired many thoughts amongst many of us. But in going forward, reflecting on this, we're going to ask Rob to kick us off by way of his commentary role, and then we will be having a discussion with the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning to everybody. I think the organizers thought that after a Filipino in India commenting upon an Indian in the Philippines that we saw yesterday, we'll invite another comical duo on stage, this time from Europe. And so one from Italy, one from the Netherlands. So hopefully we can provide some good exchanges. But we are actually in the same position as Manny Jimenez and Vinod Thomas were, which is that they basically agreed with each other. We also basically agree with each other. There wasn't anything in there that I would object to from a professional perspective or from the perspective of what ideas is trying to achieve or is looking at. But that's not the role of the commentator. We are supposed to start up the discussion. And so let me, for a moment, go into the criticism that has been leveled at the SDGs and at what we are trying to do here. And basically, you can sum that up as first, these SDGs are not realistic. Secondly, this is a blueprint plan for the world, which is not implementable. 3, if it is not realistic and it's not implementable, do you really think you can evaluate it? So basically, they throw away all of this. And the criticism was perhaps voiced in the strongest terms by William Easterly, a well-known economist, who basically said, in desperation almost, only the UN can come up with a hopeless document like this. And then, of course, I mean, the misunderstanding is really going to the highest level, because as Marco has pointed out, it wasn't the UN that came up with this. In fact, William Easterly is then fully in favor of the MDGs, simple goals that are achievable because they are focused on something that you can measure, and we need to do this and so on, and there need to be more children in school, so who cares whether they get good education or not? This is implementable and measurable. And that plan, the MDGs, were actually developed and written by the UN. And it's indeed the criticism against the MDGs, that the MDGs were not looking at fundamental aspects like the quality of education, the quality of health services, and so on, and how health services were related to education, and how all these problems interact. That came up through the practitioners, through countries, through evaluators, through other people involved in development in various organizations. So indeed, the SDGs is a bottom-up document. Does that make the SDGs realistic and implementable? No. Of course, these problems are there. But as I have argued already in many places, the SDGs are aspirational. They provide a picture of the issues that need to be tackled, and this is what we need to do. But now the national processes need to take over. And let me just give you an example from the Netherlands. The SDGs are also concerned about the rise of sea levels. And Here in the Netherlands, in the Netherlands, where I'm coming from, yes, we are concerned about this. Our house in the Netherlands is 2 meters below sea level. So I hate to think that at a certain moment it would be 4 meters below sea level, or 5 meters below sea level. At a certain moment it will stop, and we will face the situation that we need to move over to, for example, Switzerland, which couldn't care less about the rise of sea level. So this is really national. The way that the SDGs apply is national. And now the national processes need to take over. And priority setting needs to be done, and analysis needs to be done on how these issues play in your country and how they should be tackled in your country. But then we also see that if we want to implement them, if we want to tackle these problems, we need to recognize the complexity of the issues. And there, as evaluators, we are facing the difficulty that our current tools are not really geared towards this complexity. In fact, Marco raised this when he said, should we follow the logic framework approach that is rather linear and straightforward. And we've also had, in the first keynote address of Maleka Samarianaike, we had the call for interacting with the people who are concerned, who are facing and confronted with these problems and who need to solve them, and give them a voice in evaluations. But let me focus now in my comments a bit on this issue of complexity, because there are people who are then saying we don't have the tools to deal with complexity. And I would say, yes, we do actually have the tools, and we're gathering experience on them. We've had several sessions at these conferences that discuss these tools. And in general, they are systems analysis, qualitative comparative analysis, various forms of risk analysis and risk assessments. And many of them use mathematical tools that are actually more rigorous than statistics. You know that when we talk about impact evaluation and rigorous analysis, that is all based on statistical analysis. And statistics is not really a good mathematical tool to deal with complexity. Statisticians will tell you, yes, we can do it. But the calculations become so difficult that as non-statisticians, at a certain moment, you say, oh, I can no longer follow this. But these other tools, they go to other areas of mathematics, like set theory or Boolean logic and chaos theory. And these mathematical tools are actually more rigorous than statistics. So there is no need for us to withdraw from this. We can actually do it. And over time, these will need to become part of our toolbox. At the moment, there's great interest in how these tools work, but we must learn more. So I'm afraid that rather than to give credence to the criticism, I've provided more support for. So maybe from the audience, we can hear some more critical remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob. Would like now to open for reflections from the floor. You do not need to frame your thoughts in terms of a question to the keynote speaker or Rob as commentator. We welcome your reflections, but would like to kindly ask that you stick within 2 or 3 minutes in the interest of our own session, our overall session planning. The floor is open. We have microphones available for those who wish to make a contribution. Please, we have over on the far right-hand side here. Whilst that, others coming up? Oh, I see a few. Very good. Next. I have over here on the far right.
The first question is more related to what we could do beyond sex disaggregation or quintile, disaggregation, to actually make our evaluations a little bit more equitable and gender responsive. Because I find myself quite difficult position when I'm asked those questions, after giving a presentation on how to make our work a little bit more equitable. And the second one, I think following up on what Rob just said, I know that we talk about country-led systems and we talk about national evaluation capacity, but we're also very much aware that capacity for measuring at times quite difficult variables and quite difficult constructs is not always there, or doesn't necessarily meet certain requirements they're expected to be there for those measurements to be useful. So when I read about the 17 indicators and the 17 goals, and then I read and we learn about the 169 indicators, I'm afraid, and I hope that I'm just overly pessimistic with no reason, that there's going to be the risk for further dependency of countries on external technical assistance and on the arrival of external experts, that those constructs probably developed in the first place. I was already contacted over the last 3 months by 2 governments that were actually asking me, should we wait until the goals are out and construct and develop our national development plan around those, or should we rather start working on a national development plan and then see how those 7 targets make sense to us? So these are my 2 questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We will take a couple of more questions or comments before we ask the panelists to respond. We have one here and then next over here.
I just wanted to reflect on the high level of participation in setting the agenda for the SDGs.
My apologies. Could I kindly ask the contributors to introduce themselves in very brief?
Okay. I have my laptop on my. Okay, so my. Okay, thank you. My name is Adinda van Hemerijk, and I work as a freelancer, amongst others, for IFAD and for UNICEF. I just wanted to briefly reflect on the risks also of having this high level of engagement in setting the SDGs, that we actually have as nations and as international nations a responsibility to also involve all these agencies around the world in evaluation. Because if these are high-level aspirations, then we know that from the past there have been a lot of publications around the risk of large-scale participation. There are many publications out on that, research conducted, amongst others, from Institute of Development Studies. So if it just remains lip service, then we run the risk of losing huge credibility worldwide. So the only way to avoid that is keep people, actors, engaged in evaluation, in evaluation to learn how this complexity turns out and what kind of results we are getting, emerging results from doing this kind of work towards realizing the SDGs, so that people understand and learn why certain things don't turn out the way perhaps we always expect. So I think it's very important that we start thinking of engaging people, communities, actors in evaluation. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more contribution from the floor here, please. Thank you.
Good morning to everybody. I'm Rashmi Agrawal from India, and I thank Marco for a very enlightening address and Rob raising the issues with which we are all concerned. I will add to the question of Michele. I want to know that Marco has said that there are going to be country-led evaluations for the follow-up. So I want to know, are there any coordinated efforts to develop indicators for evaluation, or individual countries are to develop evaluation indicators on their own? Obviously, both have their implications. Thank you.
Okay, we'll have one round of reflection from Marco and Rob, and then we will have the floor open again for the plenary.
Okay, thank you very much for the very interesting questions. Before addressing the question, I would just like you know, as the commentator has to be critical with the speaker has the liberty to be critical with the commentator, if you don't mind. And just because you were saying the three critiques of the SDGs are, one, that they are not realistic. Well, personally, I don't agree. Because I think that the world today has the technology, the knowledge, and the resources to implement the SDGs. What perhaps is missing or could be strengthened is the political will. Because, frankly, I mean, there are several studies that they are demonstrating that the SDGs are realistic. Once again, we have technology, knowledge, and resources to do them. It's just a political decision to invest and to prioritize this kind of development, this kind of world that we would like, versus other kind of world. So, to me, they are realistic. It's just an issue of mainly political will. The second, that they are blueprints. First of all, well, as you also rightly say, these are not the United Nations goals. These are the goals of 192 countries in the world. The SDGs, they were not decided by UN specialists. They were decided by 192 countries. That's one. The second is that obviously the SDGs, they should be contextualized in the countries. You gave a very clear-cut example that maybe for Switzerland the issue of the rising sea is not the most important thing, but for Netherlands it is. So the idea is these 17 SDGs and 169 targets, they should be contextualized to the local situation. And the third is, are they available? Well, that's a little bit also our challenge as evaluation community. That's why the UN, the Rome-based UN agencies, World Food Programme, IFAD, FIO, etc., for example, next month they are organizing a technical event in Rome around the availability of SDG 2, exactly to tackle this question. UN Women, in partnership with others, next year will organize also some events around SDG 5 and SDG 10. So that's a little bit also about to us as evaluation community to try to assess if they are available or not, and if not, what can be done to make them available. Now, going to the first question from Michele, what can be done beyond disaggregation of data? That is already something very important, and is not always done. So that would be anyway is not already something that has been achieved, but is still a challenge. But then, as I was saying, I mean, we should not simply look at what's the effect of any policy programs to the different populational group, but we should try to look at what are the structural causes of these disparities. And as I was mentioning, so it means that we, for example, when it comes to methodologies, clearly we need mixed methods approaches, because we are looking not only at the supply side of services, for example. You know, if you are evaluating, I don't know, the national health program, etc., is not only to look what's the coverage of health centers, so, you know, more the hard data, coverage rates, etc., but you should look also at why the different populational groups are accessing or not, are using or not, for example, the health centers. So we should look at knowledge, attitude, practices. We should look if those centers, they are cultural responsive, if they are sensitive to different social norms, etc. So these are all qualitative aspects that the evaluation should look at, and then, of course, bring together both quantitative and qualitative aspects. There were a couple of questions, both from Michele and from Rashmi, on the issue of the indicators. just to say that the indicators, and by the way, Michele, the indicators, unfortunately, they are more than 169. Yeah, 169 are the targets. The indicator are almost 300. But the global statistical community is trying to reduce those indicators. But so there is the UN Statistical Division that is facilitating a consultative process where all the national statistical bureaus are engaged and involved to come up with indicators that are both relevant to the targets but also feasible to the real world. So these indicators are not decided just by a few specialists in New York, but they are being decided by different stakeholders, including all the national statistical offices. But definitely, there is the challenge of capacities. But that's why there is the Paris 21 initiative to strengthen national statistical capacities. That's why the SDGs are talking about data revolution, because it's a challenge that is very clear to everybody, and more resources, not enough, but still more and more resources are being channeled to strengthen national statistical capacities. And then I think that from Arlinda was mainly a comment, I would imagine, really on the importance of engaging different stakeholders in evaluation, and I could not agree more.
Thank you. Marco has already said a lot. Let me just very quickly say that, first of all, that the machinery that is now starting up to look at how we can tackle the Sustainable Development Goals should, of course, in principle, be as consultative and as interactive as the Sustainable Development Goals themselves were gathered together. And this means at the country level and also internationally. And internationally, we see some initiatives that we then should be concerned about. Indeed, Marco just mentioned the statisticians. They were actually gathering here in Bangkok and were meeting yesterday or 2 days ago, I think. And also meeting in Bangkok was the Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation, which actually supports countries then to continue consultative processes in the country on many of these issues. And I would very much argue that indicators and ways of measuring, etc., are also country priority issues. As I mentioned in my comments, we should not require Switzerland to report on the level of the sea rise at its borders, because there is no sea in the case of Switzerland. So we need to be sensible about this and do it in the right way. And we need to keep the people involved and our organizations involved. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a number of further contributions. Please, first over here, and then I have here next in the second row.
Good morning. I am Hafez Bouktif from Tunisia. I am General Director of Center of Research and Studies on Social Protection. And now we are trying to develop some independent evaluation of some policies in social field in Tunisia and in social protection, especially in social protection. I want to add something to what Mr. Segone said, and it is from a perspective of academic stakeholder and government representative. What I want to add is we have to introduce more new dimension in this field, which is communication and advocacy. Because about evaluation, as a part of the NEC agenda and also as a part of Thailand declaration. Why I try to introduce this communication and advocacy? Because I think, as the comment As you said in the panel, the situation evaluation is complex. There is a lot of complexity, and communication can reduce this complexity and can help to accept the results of evaluation to change the world that we want. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have on the second row, we have on the middle section here was the next contribution. I have noted a few more.
Bonjour. Suis,
In fact, I had given the floor to the lady. You'll have to be next. My apologies.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a statement here. I mean, I see some contradictions in some of the statements that are being made. We talk about
and
that
you are, please.
Oh, apologies. I'm Farzana Ahmed from the Asian Development Bank. We talked about the fact that the SDGs are realistic, and then yet we say countries need a lot of capacity to do it. We've talked about that it requires political will, but then we're still at the same time saying it was bottom up. So I think we have to be careful that this doesn't result in the creation of an industry, trying to track these 179 targets or 300 indicators. And what's important to be able to stress is that the aspirations of the countries are in their national development plans. So these 17 indicators or targets or whatever they are will be embedded in national development plans. And where our role is to be able to assist countries to the body of knowledge that we have as a group in order to be able to help them achieve the national development plans and the prioritizations that the countries themselves choose to put. And that's quite important if we want to stress that these are going to be country-led. So it's not, we should not try and create an industry when this is one of the problems that the MDGs had.
If it's okay with Robert Marco, we'll take a couple more. So we will allow the gentleman by way of proximity to the microphone. But otherwise, more hands, please.
Halal Didi, je suis mauritanien de la société civile, l'association mauritanienne de l'évaluation. J'ai la première question. Au début, je dois remercier quand même le conférencier pour la clarté d'exposé et le contradicteur. Si M. Marco a présenté ou a commenté les 2 tiers pleins de verre, son contradicteur a commenté le tiers vide. Donc ça se complète dans l'évaluation. Ma première question, est-ce que les ODD sont réalistes, mais sont-ils réalisables? La deuxième question, c'est qu'avant, on avait les ODD pour les pays pauvres. Actuellement, pour les ODD, c'est aussi bien pour les pays pauvres et les pays riches. Comment peut-on avoir l'équité? Ça sera difficile parce que celui qui est le plus court avait droit à 2 chaises et plus pour suivre le match. Donc on aura besoin de 4 chaises pour suivre le match. C'est un autre problème d'évaluation encore qui doit se poser. La troisième question que je pose, M. Marcos avait dit que la réalisation des ODD dépend d'une volonté politique. Ce qui est encore plus complexe. Est-ce que nous aurons des outils pour mesurer cette volonté politique suivant les pays? Je vous remercie.
Thank you. 2 rows behind, gentlemen, please.
Good morning. I'm Romeo Santos. I represent Asia Pacific Evaluation. My comment is a reflection on Rob's commentary, and I think an answer to those who criticize the SDGs as goals. Someone who is a specialist, we might say, in strategic planning would understand that goals are really done that way, not necessarily or achievable per se. That goals are like our programs or our schedule or perhaps syllabi in school. They are made to be broken. That's why in our way of doing evaluation, we re-articulate from the goal and we identify achievable outcomes. So it's an issue of the understanding of how goals are. And I think the criticisms are not valid. And that's the reason why I advocate evaluators to improve their skills in strategic planning. Now, regarding the skills, building up capacity and evaluation, I agree with that we have to build capacity in evaluation. And regarding his comment that we may have the skills, the tools, and so on, I would say that we have to continue developing it. We have to remember that we are not evaluating pipe dreams. We are evaluating socioeconomic phenomenon. This morning, one of my colleagues commented when we were in the elevator. She said, actually, she is this. She said that evaluators are like this elevator of this hotel. When we put our card, sometimes you push the room that you want to go to, it works, sometimes not. So evaluators are like the elevator. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And I think it's true. So that's the challenge, I think, and we're moving towards that. Thank you.
And the last one for this round at the very back.
Thank you. Craig Russum from the ILO. I've heard a number of our colleagues voice concerns about the evaluability of the SDGs, and I share some of those concerns. When I do training for the ILO, I tell people that you establish your goals, and then to help you measure your progress towards those goals, you develop indicators. The first time that you measure your indicators, that's your baseline. And then to set your targets, you add the progress that you hope to achieve to the baseline. And so when I hear that there are 169 targets and over 300 indicators, the math just doesn't work for me. So I realize there's probably little or nothing that we in this room can do, but that's a concern that I have.
We have no option but to deal with that, would be what I'd say. But in giving the floor back to the keynote speaker and commentator, I hope there will be room for one more round of floor's contribution. Meanwhile, Marco.
Yeah, once again, thanks a lot for very interesting question and comments. From the colleague from Tunisia, I could not agree more. I mean, unfortunately, we as evaluators, almost by definition, we are pretty weak when it comes to communication and advocacy. And that's why Eval Partner came up with a global advocacy strategy. And one component was the International Year of Evaluation, but another component was to try to strengthen national capacities for advocacy for evaluation. So I would like to invite you. You can Google once again, or you just go directly to the mymne.org website, and you can download a manual on how to advocate for an enabling environment for evaluation. Because the idea is that an advocacy strategy should be contextual to the country. So obviously, we cannot come up with one advocacy strategy for everybody. That's why we came up with a manual for each country, if they wish, to develop their own advocacy strategy to enable an enabling environment. And there is even an e-learning, so you can either read or just watch the e-learning. But absolutely, that's something that we should improve and strengthen our capacity when it comes to communication and advocacy. From the colleagues from the Asian Bank, so they are realistic, but clearly it's going to be a big challenge. I mean, so the fact that to me they are realistic doesn't mean that they are easy to achieve and to implement. No, it's absolutely a huge challenge. What I was saying is that they're realistic in the sense that if there is political will, there are resources, knowledge, and technology to achieve them, but that won't be easy. And I think you were referring to the risk of creating a kind of industry for capacity development, etc. And I would like just to refer to a great example that I had the opportunity to be somehow part, and that was the government of Morocco, in partnership with the government of Mexico. They organized They have it's not only that they organize an event on institutionalizing evaluation in public policies, and that was not organized by any UN agencies, it was organized directly by the government. But it's not only about one event where they invited several other countries, but it's not only one event, they have a memorandum of understanding between the two governments for a mid-term cooperation. And I think that's the way to go. It's not even for the UN or for the multilateral banks to give technical assistance, of course. I mean, the UN has a role in this, but I think that the real way to go is really the facilitation of this South-South cooperation, and I just wanted to mention that excellent example from the government of Morocco and Mexico. Pour les collègues de la Mauritanie, bon, est-ce qu'ils sont réalisables? Bon, comme j'ai dit, vraiment, il dépend de la volonté politique de chacun de nous. Et c'est pour cela que je pense qu'on devrait avoir un mind shift. On devrait nous voir pas seulement comme évaluateurs, comme techniciens, mais on devrait se voir comme des ambassadeurs de l'évaluation, comme des activistes de l'évaluation. Parce que les ODD vont être réalisés vraiment seulement s'il y aura la volonté politique de les réaliser.
Thank you. Let me just add an evaluation perspective to this. Craig Russell basically said, how can we evaluate this? This is impossible. There are too many indicators. It's all too complex, and we need to start from the goal that needs to be achieved and so on. But I would argue that we actually need to approach it in a different way. We need to start thinking about the system that is aimed to be changed. We need to make these systems more sustainable. And I would say these are goals that governments also have. How can education in your country become sustainable? How can healthcare become sustainable? How can the interaction with the environment become sustainable? How can services be sustained? This leads indeed to a different perspective. You are then no longer looking at what a specific intervention is supposed to achieve, but how this specific intervention interacts with the system and pushes the system in a different direction. And your indicators should not be in the project itself, but in the system. And this is what we're currently looking at. If you look, for example, at climate change, the main indicators for climate change are being gathered by scientists in the IPCC. And nobody is asking projects that we undertake or policies, specific policies that we have, to do global measurements on particles of CO2 in the air. So we have this kind of a system perspective that is now required of us. And we're not there yet. This is a major challenge that we're facing as a profession. And my fear a little bit is that all these meetings that are now starting to take place are reducing things again to the traditional perspective and are saying, let's have a log frame approach, or we'll just make it compulsory for all projects to report on all of these indicators. And no, that's not going to work. This is requiring also a lot of innovation in the ways that we think about how these SDGs how we can be aware of whether we are achieving them or not at the country level and at the global level. So the challenges are enormous, and there is also a huge capacity problem. And we as a community need to work on this and continue to discuss this.
A final word from Mark. I'm afraid that we have little way of freedom on time. There is a schedule, and there's to be, as Anna mentioned, a group photograph session immediately following this. So I'm afraid we're going to have to beg Marco for his final words to wrap up this session. Thank you.
Actually, I'm standing up because I have a plea for all of us. If we want to transform the world, we must transform ourselves first. So my plea is really to transform ourselves from technicians to passionate activists for evaluation. Each of us should become an ambassador for evaluation to be used to inform public policies to transform the world. So it's really a plea, when you go back to your country, please get in contact with your National Evaluation Association, become an activist in your National Evaluation Association, and make sure that your National Evaluation Association will make a difference. Because the world is really interconnected today. Either we will succeed all together, or we will fail all together. And I think we want to succeed all together. So please, please become an evaluator activist. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marco and Rob, for that. I believe there is now a photo session to who has control of the parameters of that photo session. Anna, right here. Please come converge here very momentarily for a group photograph. Yes. Yes, please come join us. In the do this without you. Cheese. Only one. You stay so long, only one.
One more. Okay, one more. Come on, guys.
We're doing one more. Please come back. One more. And on top of that, we have an evaluation form that we want you to pick up. Christina Magro will have copies for you.
They are over the chair here.
Are they? Oh.
In our registration desk.
Okay, at the registration desk you will find an evaluation form.
Okay.
So please, thank you very much. And pick up an evaluation form. It's on the chair in front.